"Get out, or I'll call security to throw you out." That voice rang out, cold and sharp like a blade, slicing through the thick, stifling air of the interview room. The one who uttered that sentence was none other than Philip Rogers, the company's head of human resources. He leaned back in his expensive leather chair, his fingers interlaced in a display of fake authority, his scrutinizing gaze sizing up Andre Brooks as if he were nothing more than a nameless drifter who had wandered into a place where he clearly didn't belong. Andre stood silent. His simple white shirt, worn-out dress pants, and scuffed black leather shoes made him look like a jobless man taking his last shot at fortune. But behind those eyes, behind that polite smile, was a secret that neither the room, nor Philip, nor even this entire building had any idea about. Before everyone in that room, Andre Brooks, the man who had just been appointed as the company's new chairman, was quietly assuming control without any public announcement. The appointment hadn't yet been made official to the company at large, so most employees were unaware of this monumental change. This wasn't an ordinary job interview anymore. This was a reversed examination. He was here to witness the true face of the very system he was about to take charge of. And Philip, with his polished exterior but petty soul, had revealed himself from the very first encounter. Could Philip Rogers even begin to imagine that he had just declared war on the very man who would soon decide his fate? Andre didn't reply immediately. He gently pulled out a chair and sat down with a strangely calm demeanor. A few others in the room furrowed their brows at the audacity of this poor black man who dared to sit without being invited. Philip looked at him, smirked, and sneered. "You're stubborn. I'll give you that. Fine. I'll give you a chance, but don't expect much. We have standards and, let's say, not everyone measures up." Andre met his gaze with quiet composure. Standards. "We'll see about that." Philip glanced at the resume, his voice dripping with disdain. Andre Brooks, mediocre degrees, unimpressive experience, small-time companies no one's ever heard of. What makes you think I should listen to you? Andre spoke slowly. "I believe I can bring value. But of course, that can only be proven if I'm given the opportunity." Opportunity! Philip laughed aloud. "Opportunities are for those who fit. Just look at yourself." Laughter erupted from the two HR assistants beside Philip. The room seemed to echo with sanctioned contempt. Andre remained silent, his eyes no longer those of a humble job seeker. Behind them, a silent storm was brewing. Philip took a leisurely sip of coffee, acting as if Andre no longer existed. Then he turned to one of his assistants, calling the next candidate. "Let this guy—" "Wait a bit, I'm too busy." Andre was left in the middle of the room, like a nameless, forgotten shadow. Time passed. Every minute was like a blade cutting deeper into the patience of any ordinary person. But Andre sat there, as still as stone. Each scornful glance, each mocking laugh, was etched into his mind like paving stones on the road to the reversal that was coming. A young female employee quietly approached, lowering her voice as she slipped a file into the inner office. "You'll never get hired here, no matter how good you are. Here, they don't need people like you." Andre turned to her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, but sometimes people don't come here to get hired." The girl froze for a moment at his reply, but quickly turned away to avoid being seen talking to him. "He didn't come here to get hired. Then what was he really here for?" Philip's voice rang out, dripping with mockery. "You're still here. I thought you'd know better and leave already. Come on in. Give me 5 minutes of entertainment. Then I've got real work to do." Andre stepped into the main interview room, facing a long table with 5 people seated. Philip sat at the center, his gaze condescending, arms spread wide as if he alone owned the space. Philip flipped through the resume again, this time deliberately letting it drop to the floor, glancing at Andre like issuing a challenge. "Pick that up for me." Andre bent down, retrieved the file, and placed it on the table with a composure that made even Philip uneasy. "Introduce yourself. Keep it brief. I'm not interested in pointless bragging." Andre began to speak. His voice was deep, clear, each word firm as a nail driven in. He spoke of his experience, past projects, ideas he had proposed. One of the board members, the head of engineering, furrowed his brow. There was something in Andre's words that caught his attention. That man realized those ideas were the very innovations the corporation was about to purchase the rights to. But Philip brushed it aside, scoffing. "Oh, please. Everyone knows how to embellish their resume. I don't need to hear more. Andre said nothing, but his gaze held Philip's, making the arrogant smirk falter for a split second. Yet Philip pressed on, his tone harsh. Listen, you should find a job more suited to your class. Security guard, parking lot attendant, something like that. Here, you're just an embarrassment to the company. The room froze. Even colleagues who had aligned with Philip began to feel that his insults had crossed a line. Andre took a deep breath, then raised his head and looked directly at Philip, who was still sneering from across the table. In Andre's eyes glinted a cold, profound light. His voice rang out, just loud enough for all to hear, so let's see who's still standing in the end. The interview began in an air so thick it felt suffocating. The spacious, luxurious room with glass walls overlooking the glamorous city outside now seemed like nothing more than a gilded cage, trapping the arrogance and cruelty of the men seated on the other side of the table. Philip Rogers leaned back in his chair, arms folded across his chest, his eyes half amused, half contemptuous as he looked at Andre, the man he thought was nothing more than someone foolish enough to dream beyond his station. Well then, let's begin, Philip said, deliberately dragging out the final word as if to emphasize who held the power here. Andre Brooks, right? Can you tell us why someone with such an ordinary background as yours thinks he could work here? Andre looked him straight in the eye, his gaze bright but calm. Because I believe I can bring value to this company. Sir, I don't look at just my own reputation. I look at what I have done and what I can do. A brief silence fell, as if the room itself was caught off guard by Andre's unwavering confidence. But only for a moment Philip broke it with a derisive chuckle. Value. That's a textbook answer. What value? A wrinkled shirt, worn-down shoes, or that resume that looks like it was printed at a cheap internet cafe? Laughter erupted from the two assistants sitting beside Philip, their eyes gleaming with delight at the public humiliation of the man they considered beneath them. Philip pressed on, not even giving Andre the chance to respond. Better yet, why don't you tell me this in a high-class company like ours, where image and refinement matter? What makes you think you fit in? Andre drew a quiet breath, keeping his composure intact. His voice was firm. I believe a high-class company looks at intelligence, character, and the ability to contribute not just appearances. And if I'm given the opportunity, I believe I can prove that. The head of the engineering department gave the slightest nod, almost involuntarily, in response to that answer, but immediately stopped when Philip's sharp glance shot his way. Oh, how charming, Philip interrupted, stretching his sneer into a long, deliberate expression across his face. A man dressed like a beggar trying to lecture us on class, be realistic. This isn't a place for people who live in illusions. Andre sat upright, his posture unyielding. He didn't so much as blink in the face of those cutting words. He began to speak of past projects, of innovative ideas in human resource management that any true CEO would have admired if they were truly listening. But before Andre could finish his sentence, Philip slammed his hand on the table with a loud thud, shattering every train of thought in the room. Enough. You think you're here to give a presentation? I don't have time to listen to a man who doesn't even know his place ramble on about things he thinks he's good at. Laughter rang out again. A heavy silence followed, thick with the weight of intimidation. Andre looked around the room. He saw the mocking glances, the head of engineering avoiding his gaze, Philip reclining smugly as if he'd just brushed a stain off his expensive suit. This isn't your place, Philip said, lowering his voice to a tone cold as ice. Go home before I call security. The room seemed to freeze. All eyes turned to Andre, waiting for the moment he would lower his head and quietly shuffle out in shame. But Andre didn't move. A silent breeze seemed to pass through, stirring the curtains behind Philip as if signaling the storm about to break one no one had seen coming. Andre lifted his head slightly higher, his eyes now glinting with a strange light. A faint smile played at the corner of his lips, but it was no longer the smile of a humble job seeker. It was the smile of a man who had just spotted the fatal weakness of his adversary and knew it was his alone to see. Don't ever dream of setting foot in places like this, Philip hissed, his mouth curling into a vicious smile. There are doors that will stay closed forever to people like you. And if you have any shred of self-respect left, you'd better get out of here before I do something you'll regret. Andre didn't answer right away. He stared directly at Philip, letting the insults wash over him. But not a trace of injury appeared on his face. His eyes remained bright, holding something Philip could never comprehend, a silent strength waiting for the exact moment to rise. A small click echoed from the doorway. No one noticed, but a young backstage employee standing just outside had quietly pressed the record button on his phone. His face was pale with tension, but in his eyes shone determination. He couldn't stand by and ignore the cowardice he had just witnessed. Inside the room, the air grew even heavier, as if on the verge of bursting under the weight of Philip's words. Andre slowly turned, ready to leave, but as his hand touched the door handle, he paused. Andre turned his head, his gaze seeming to pierce through Philip's arrogant mask, seeing straight into a man hiding from fears he didn't dare face. A mysterious smile spread across Andre's lips, not the smile of a defeated man, but of one who already knew how the battle would end. That door, his voice rang out, warm yet razor-sharp, each word etched into the minds of those who witnessed it. I think it's about to change owners. The room fell so silent they could hear the ticking of the wall clock. The eyes that had followed Andre with contempt now shifted, as if they sensed the storm brewing behind those words. All eyes were on him, but this time, not waiting for him to bow his head and leave, they were waiting in confusion, in fear, and in curiosity to see what would happen next. In the grand banquet hall of a 5-star hotel in the heart of the city, glasses of red wine glistened under sparkling crystal chandeliers. Laughter and lively chatter filled the air around the long tables covered in white cloth, where the company's senior leaders and managers gathered to celebrate the past quarter's achievements. In this setting, Philip Rogers became the star of the night, walking with a smug swagger, wineglass in hand, his eyes full of arrogance. Really? You all should have seen it, he said loudly, his voice echoing through the room as if he were afraid someone might not hear. A broke black guy, dressed like he just pulled clothes out of a dumpster, actually dared to dream about stepping into our company. I taught him a lesson he won't forget. Those seated nearby burst out laughing, a few raising their glasses in agreement. Philip swirled his wine, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction as if he had just won some glorious battle. A young assistant next to him laughed along sycophantically. You've really got guts, Philip. Not everyone can handle such sensitive situations like that. What was his name again, Andre? Something? Philip shrugged, finishing his glass in one gulp. Something Brooks. Someone like that isn't worth remembering. I told you this company has standards. We can't let low-level dreamers ruin our image. A department head leaned in and quietly asked, Aren't you afraid he might sue you for racial discrimination? Philip laughed loudly, clapping the man on the shoulder. Afraid of what? What evidence does he have, and who's going to believe someone like him over me? I'm Philip Rogers, the face of this company. Don't worry about such nonsense. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the banquet hall, the young backstage employee from earlier sat silently, fingers gently swiping over his phone, where the full recording of the humiliating interview, every word remained saved. As the party wore on, Philip didn't stop boasting. He stood at the center of his loyal colleagues, raising his glass high. Listen to me. In this society, there's an order. People who don't know their place will learn soon enough. And today, I was the one to teach that lesson. A ding sounded from the phone of a senior executive. He checked the message and frowned. Within seconds, the entire table fell silent as everyone received the same notification. Notice from the board of the parent corporation tomorrow at 9 a.m. All senior leaders must attend a special meeting in the main hall with the new chairman. The chairman will officially debut and present the restructuring plan. Philip scowled, set down his glass, and smirked, shrugging. Probably another old Japanese guy. Or some ancient capitalist coming to give a speech before retiring. Big bosses love their theatrics. A marketing director cautiously said, Don't you think it's strange we never heard anything about a new chairman before? And now a sudden, urgent meeting. Philip sneered. Don't make such a fuss. Whoever it is won't affect us. They're up in the clouds. We're the ones managing things on the ground. Just enjoy the party. Worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow. At that moment, a server passed by, balancing a tray full of wine glasses, walking steadily, his gaze brushing past Philip. No one noticed that in that instant, behind the server's uniform. Those eyes belonged to Andre Brooks, the very man they had been mocking so viciously. The party continued, but the mood had subtly shifted. The laughter grew less frequent, replaced by glances exchanged quietly. That announcement was like a sharp thorn stuck at the center of the table, making everyone uneasy though no one dared voice it. Still unaware, Philip kept waving his glass like a victor. Tomorrow I'll show up. Smile, shake some hands, listen to some old man's speech. I bet after that they'll head back to Tokyo or New York and leave us to do the real work. Come on, let's toast. He raised his glass in celebration, not realizing he was toasting to his own downfall. The party ended close to midnight. Philip, tipsy from the wine, strode out into the grand hotel lobby, glass still in hand, half finished. He looked around, full of smug satisfaction after an evening of praise, and then the moment came. As Philip looked up to call for a car, a man in a black tailored suit, moving with calm poise, passed right by him. The hotel lights reflected off the perfect cut of the suit, the polished shoes, the determined yet cold face. It was Andre Brooks. Their eyes met for the briefest moment. Philip frowned slightly, finding the face familiar, but the haze of wine and his own self-importance made him dismiss it instantly. Andre disappeared into the elevator, leaving Philip standing there, completely unaware that the storm had already begun to blow right toward him. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the massive glass windows of the company's headquarters, bathing the grand lobby in a soft golden glow. From early on, the company's leadership had gathered immaculate suits, expensive ties smoothed down, polished leather shoes clicking rhythmically on the marble floor. The atmosphere was strangely stifling. No one dared speak loudly. Only hushed whispers filled the space. Do you know who the new chairman is? Heard no one's seen him before. The acquisition deal was so secretive. Probably some old Japanese guy, or a silver-haired billionaire. Philip entered, striding in confidently, though his eyes flickered with irritation at being summoned to an unscheduled meeting during working hours. He adjusted his collar, scanning the room. "Don't make a big deal out of this," he muttered to his inner circle. "It's just a formal introduction, a ceremony to polish the chairman's seat for the internal media." Little did he know that Chair wasn't prepared for him to share in power, but to strip him of it. The main hall was vast. A long walnut table stretched endlessly, surrounded by leather chairs arranged in an oval. The chairman's seat stood at the head of the table regal, but for now, empty. A small flag bearing the company's logo fluttered softly in the breeze of the air conditioning. Philip chose a spot near the center, sat down, arms crossed, one leg bouncing impatiently, outwardly calm. Inside, annoyance boiled. He signaled to his assistant, check the time. "They're late. These big shots always love making others wait like they're gods or something." The hall doors opened. Not an old man, not a silver-haired executive with a gold-plated name badge as Philip had imagined, but a black man, dressed in a sleek black suit, crisp white shirt, pearl cufflinks. His steps were firm, his gaze steady, his presence freezing the room in an instant. Andre Brooks. The entire room was stunned. The murmurs died abruptly, as if choked off. Philip sat frozen, his eyes wide, wider than he thought they could go. What was he seeing? The very man he had humiliated the day before, now striding toward the chairman's seat with an icy calm. Andre didn't look at Philip. He walked straight to the head of the table, set down his fine leather folder, and slowly took his seat. Fingers interlaced, he swept his gaze across the room, where every face had gone rigid with shock. The silence was so thick one could hear their own heartbeat. A department head forced a nervous smile. "Gee, good morning, Chairman." Andre gave a slight nod. His voice rang out deep and steady. "Unshaken, good morning. I am Andre Brooks. As of today, I officially assume the position of chairman of this corporation." A few people began to raise their hands to applaud, but froze mid-motion when they saw Philip's pale, rigid face, the same Philip who had bragged just the night before about teaching Andre a lesson he'd never forget. Philip swallowed hard, cold sweat breaking out along his temples. He struggled to force a crooked smile. Oh my. This? Chairman? I didn't recognize you. Yesterday was just a misunderstanding. I truly apologize if anything was out of line." Andre turned his chair slightly, finally letting his gaze rest on Philip. His eyes were like steel, calm to the point of being terrifying. "A misunderstanding?" Andre asked, his tone as measured as if he were reviewing numbers in a financial report. Philip stammered, his face flushing red, then draining white. "Why, yes. A harmless misunderstanding. I meant nothing by it. I was just following procedure." His voice trembled. He knew every word now only deepened the pit he had dug for himself. Andre gave a faint smile, not angry, not loud, but that very calmness sent a deeper chill through the room. He opened his folder, flipped through a few pages, and looked up. "Let's begin," Andre said. Let's start reviewing the entire leadership team. An assistant appeared behind Andre, setting a recorder and a small screen on the table. Names of HR executives began appearing on the screen, each linked to corresponding files. Philip stammered, "Wait, Chairman? This isn't standard procedure for an introduction." Andre cut him off, the thin smile unchanged. "Nothing is standard about restructuring, and I trust that anyone in this room who deserves their place has nothing to worry about." Andre coldly drew a thick file from his chairside bag, tapping it against the wooden table, the sound echoing across the hall. He looked Philip straight in the eye. "Let's begin with human resources." The room fell silent. No one dared breathe too loudly. And Philip, for the first time in his life, felt truly small inside the very building he had once considered his domain. The dry, hollow sound of the thick file being tapped against the wooden table still echoed through the vast conference hall. Every passing second stretched the tension tighter, like a string pulled to its breaking point. The eyes of the entire room, from department heads to vice presidents to senior aides, all turned toward Andre, the man sitting confidently in the chairman's seat, his black power suit making his icy presence even more striking. Philip swallowed hard. He felt as if the air around him had thinned, his hands trembling slightly despite his effort to steady them. He took a deep breath, forcing a strained smile. "Chairman, I think maybe we could discuss this later, in private, without everyone present, to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. You understand?" Andre leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, his gaze locking onto Philip's. His voice was low, edged like a blade. "Number Philip, right here, in front of everyone, is exactly where this belongs." Philip's heartbeat pounded in his chest, louder than the nervous murmurs filling the room. Andre gave a small signal. An aide stepped forward, placed a recording device on the table, and pressed play, immediately. The room was filled with the sound from that tiny machine. "Get out right now, or I'll call security to throw you out." Philip's voice rang out, full of contempt and false authority, freezing the entire hall in stunned silence. Then came the string of insults, every word loud and clear. "What makes you think I should listen to you? That wrinkled shirt, those worn-down shoes. This isn't a place for people with delusions. You don't belong here. Leave before I call security." Philip's words echoed through the hall, no longer symbols of power, but the sound of his own self-destruction. Several leaders stared at Philip, shocked. A vice president whispered, "My God, this is real!" Philip tried to interrupt, his voice cracking. Wait. This recording was edited. It's fake. It's a setup." Andre's lip curved in the faintest smirk. He gave another signal. The conference hall doors opened. A young employee entered, face pale but eyes steady. It was the same backstage worker from before. He bowed to the board, then lifted his gaze. "Speaking firmly, sirs, I'm the one who recorded the entire interview that day. This is the original file, unedited, uncut. And in addition," his hands trembled slightly as he pulled out a stack of papers, "I submit evidence of emails and messages from Mr. Philip. In them, he repeatedly instructed the recruitment team to reject applications from black candidates without reviewing their qualifications." A senior executive shot to his feet. "Let me see that." The stack of papers was passed from hand to hand, each black line on white paper cut into Philip's honor like a blade. "Don't approve of these black kids. Don't waste my time. Reject immediately. I don't want that kind of company. Find suitable candidates, you know what I mean." The room fell into deadly silence. Eyes once filled with shock now burned with outrage. A major shareholder banged his hand on the table, voice cold and sharp. "Philip, this is what you've been doing behind our backs. You've disgraced the reputation of this entire corporation." Philip's face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His whole body shook, sweat soaking the collar of his shirt. Andre leaned back, his eyes never leaving Philip, his voice steady, every word sinking Philip deeper. "Philip, this isn't just about you and me. This is about the face of this company. And I don't want someone like that to exist in any company I run." Philip trembled, barely able to stay upright, clutching the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. Every eye in the room was on him, no longer respectful, no longer courteous, only cold. Scornful contempt filled the space. Out in the corridor, the internal media team had gathered, recording this unprecedented event in the company's history. And inside, The storm had finally crashed down on the man who once believed he stood above everyone else. The air was thick with tension, silence pressing down until it was suffocating. Every eye was fixed on the new chairman, the man who, in a single instant, had shattered the image Philip had spent years constructing. Andre rose from his seat. His black suit, perfectly tailored, only magnified his commanding presence. His gaze swept the length of the table, finally resting on Philip, the man whose face had gone pale as a sheet, lips trembling, eyes wide and wild like an animal cornered with nowhere left to run. Andre's voice rang out, sharp and decisive like a blade Philip Rogers. As of this moment, you are terminated from all positions within this company. We will be filing charges against you for racial discrimination, professional misconduct, and damaging the reputation of this corporation. A wave of murmurs rippled across the room like a rising tide. A vice president leaned toward his neighbor and whispered, "This will shake the whole industry." Philip gripped the edge of the table, his eyes suddenly flashing with hatred. He no longer trembled from fear, but from the fury burning in his chest. "You can't do this to me," Philip roared, his voice warped with rage. "I've given this company over 15 years of my life. You think just because you bought the company, you can do whatever you want? No way!" Andre didn't flinch. His gaze only grew colder. Service that destroyed others' dignity, that crushed the chances of people who deserve them. "You're mistaken, Philip. The day you chose to insult me and so many others, you ended everything yourself." Philip snatched up his phone, frantically dialing. He shouted, "Get my lawyer, I'll sue him, I'll fight this all the way." But his assistant, the one who had always flattered him, kept his head down and took a step away. Even those who had laughed alongside him just the day before now averted their eyes, as if avoiding a contagion. In that instant, Philip realized he was utterly alone. Andre didn't miss a beat. He gestured to his aide. "Prepared documents revoking Mr. Philip's access to all internal systems, company accounts, and request security to escort him from the premises," Philip howled. "Struggling against the inevitable. You'll regret this. I won't go down that easily, Andre Brooks. You think you've won? I'll drag you into the mud with me?" As security approached, Philip suddenly lunged from his chair, charging at Andre like a desperate beast, but in an instant, 2 guards pinned him down, forcing him against the table. Andre stood unmoving, his gaze steady as ice, looking down at Philip. His voice was frigid. "You just showed the entire company exactly why you don't belong here." The conference hall doors swung open. Security dragged Philip out under the cold, contemptuous stares of the colleagues he had once looked down upon like pawns. But Philip wasn't done. In his wild eyes, the fire of hatred burned bright. "I'll be back. Andre, I'll make you lose everything." Plot twist outside the hall. Reporters, cameras, and flashing lights were already waiting. As soon as Philip was thrown out, they swarmed him with questions. "Mr. Rogers, do you have a response to the accusations of racial discrimination? Do you have any defense for your actions? Does your family know about those emails and messages?" Philip lowered his head, his hands gripped tight by security, his pale face streaked with sweat and tears. From the crowd of reporters, a luxury car pulled up. A woman stepped out, his wife. Panic filled her eyes as she took in the scene. She cried out, "Philip, what is this? What have you done?" But Philip couldn't answer. His throat closed up as he saw the disappointment and fear in the eyes of the one person who once stood beside him, inside the hall. Andre stood at the glass wall, watching the scene unfold below. A major shareholder approached, gently patting his shoulder. "You've done what many of us have longed to see. From today, I believe this company will be a place we can all be proud of." Andre didn't turn. His gaze stayed fixed on the chaos below. Outside, the reporters' voices rang out loud and clear. Shaking the entire building, the mogul of the corporation, Andre Brooks makes his first public appearance. Andre remained still behind the thick glass, looking down at the chaos unfolding below. In those deep eyes, there was no more anger, no more pride, only a cold, silent understanding of the true cost of power and the price of hatred. Below, Philip was dragged away by security, surrounded by the press. Every step he took seemed to crush the very career he had spent years building, now shattered piece by piece under the flashing lights, under the merciless barrage of questions. "Mr. Rogers, do you have any comment about your immediate termination, Mr. Rogers? How do you plan to respond to the upcoming lawsuit, Mr. Rogers? Do you regret your words?" Philip struggled against the guards, stammering, his voice broken. You'll all pay for smearing me.
I won't stay silent. I'll countersue. I'll take Andre Brooks to court. But at that moment, someone held up the latest morning paper.
The bold headline blazed across the front page. First black chairman shakes up finance industry, exposes racist executive at inaugural meeting. A final crushing blow to Philip's shattered pride. His eyes blazed with fury, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. At the edge of the hall, a group from a civil rights legal organization had arrived, recording the entire event. A young attorney, eyes bright with conviction, spoke into the camera. "This will be a landmark case we'll pursue to the end. There's no room for discrimination in today's world." Inside the hall, Andre stepped away from the glass, turning back to face the board. His voice was steady. "We will rebuild from these ashes. I don't want to simply take down a wrongdoer. I want to turn this company into a model of ethics, humanity, and fairness. Anyone who can't walk that path is free to leave right now." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then, one by one, heads nodded slowly. They understood the era of dirty games was over. Philip, being dragged away, twisted back, shouting in desperation, "You think you're better than me, Andre? You're just some lucky man with money. I'll expose you. I'll ruin you. I know the secrets of this company. I know the games those shareholders are playing." The hall stirred uneasily. A major shareholder muttered, "Does he still have something on us?" Andre didn't blink. His voice was calm as the deep sea. "Whatever you know, let the law handle it. I have nothing to fear. But you, Philip, from this moment on, you have nothing left." The main doors slammed shut behind Philip, silencing his hate-filled screams. Outside, Philip's wife collapsed onto a bench, burying her face in her hands, sobbing. His son, a young college graduate, stood frozen, eyes wet with tears as he watched his father dragged away like a criminal. Inside, Andre turned back to the board, pulling out another file and placing it on the table. "Now, let's discuss the plan to restructure human resources, starting with a full review of all hiring processes, reassessment of decisions over the past 3 years, and strict action against any similar cases." Faces began to pale. Those who had once laughed along with Philip, who had turned a blind eye, now felt the tight grip of fear. Outside, the sound of the press roared through the hallways, echoing through the building. The wave of media frenzy outside seemed to seep through the soundproof walls of the conference hall. The clicks of cameras, the reporters shouting Andre Brooks's name, drowned out even the fearful whispers threading through the rows of executives. Andre stood tall, both hands resting on the table, his gaze sweeping across the room like a man who held the entire game in his hands. His voice rang out, warm but commanding. "Now we continue. Dealing with Philip was just the first step. I've had the entire hiring system from the past 3 years reviewed. The list of cases showing signs of discrimination and ethical violations is on my desk." The air in the room thickened further. A few HR heads paled, fingers tapping nervously on the table, sweat starting to bead on their brows. Andre pulled out a thick stack of papers from his briefcase, tapping it lightly on the table, the sound echoing across the room. "We will handle each case one by one. No one, no matter their rank, stands above the law and ethical standards." A seasoned vice president who had long stayed silent under Philip's regime suddenly shot to his feet. His voice tense, "Chairman, I admit, in the past I turned a blind eye due to pressure from above, but I am ready to cooperate, ready to make things right." Andre looked him straight in the eye, not angry, not harsh. He simply said, "The chance to make things right belongs only to those who truly mean it. I'll let your actions prove your words." A heavy silence followed. Then, a phone rang. An aide rushed over and handed the phone to Andre. "Your private attorney." "Chairman." Andre took the call, his voice lowering. "What is it on the other end?" The lawyer's voice was grave. "We've just received word Philip has hired a prominent law firm. He's drafting a countersuit, accusing you of abuse of power, defamation, and threatening to take the company to international court." Several board members exchanged uneasy glances, faces tight with worry. "That old fox, he won't go down easily." Andre's lips curved in a faint, mist-like smile. "Let him do as he pleases. Prepare the proper response. All records and evidence of his misconduct must be sealed and ready for court." He ended the call and addressed the room. "You see, a man cornered will still thrash about in any way he can, but we will not back down because of that." Outside, news of the meeting, of Philip's expulsion, of the evidence of misconduct was flooding the media. The company's stock wavered briefly, but quickly steadied thanks to Andre's firm stance. Andre stepped forward to the center of the hall, where the internal media team had been waiting, looking directly into the camera. His voice firm, I, Andre Brooks, as the new chairman, pledge before all shareholders, employees, and the public from today. This corporation will be a model of business ethics, fairness, and transparency. Anyone who breaks that code will have no place here. Applause began hesitant at first, then stronger, rising like a wave that swept through the entire hall. In a corner of the hallway, Philip's lawyer appeared, face tense. He leaned in to whisper to a reporter, "Get ready. Philip is preparing his own press conference. This game isn't over." Andre stepped into the hallway after finishing his speech. His gaze was cold, yet within it burned a quiet, determined fire. Every step he took was no longer just that of a newly appointed leader. It was the stride of a man ushering in a new era for the entire corporation. But ahead of him, on every floor, beneath every hallway light, the shadows of conspiracy had begun to stir. An aide rushed up to Andre, whispering urgently, "Chairman, we've just received word Philip has hired the law firm Gordon & Shields. They've officially requested a public hearing to challenge his dismissal and accuse you of defamation." Andre paused for only a beat. Just one. His lips pressed together, eyes flashing good. So he's chosen to run headfirst into a stone wall. Tell our legal team to prepare every document, and inform the board I will personally face every hearing. A shareholder hurried after Andre. Voice tense, Mr. Brooks, if this lawsuit drags on, our stock value will suffer, the company's reputation will waver. Should we consider settling quietly? Andre stopped, turned, and looked the shareholder straight in the eye. Settle with corruption if we yield to a man like Philip today. How many more Philips will we face tomorrow? I didn't buy this company to prop up a rotten empire. Anyone unwilling to walk this path with me is free to vacate their seat right now. The shareholder lowered his head, saying no more. Down in the main lobby. The crowd of reporters grew restless. One pointed at the glass doors. There Andre Brooks is coming down. Questions, microphones, and cameras instantly aimed at Andre as he stepped out. Mr. Brooks, are you concerned about Philip's lawsuit? Do you fear damage to the company's reputation? What's your response to a former executive accusing you of abuse of power? Andre raised his hand for silence. His voice rang out clear, firm. I welcome any public trial, any hearing. The light of justice does not harm the truth, and the truth is Philip severely violated the values this company stands for. We will let the law and conscience decide. A smattering of applause came from a group of young employees at the back of the lobby. A new sense of hope had just been planted. Just then, the massive LED screen outside the building lit up. Broadcasting live from a major hotel downtown where Philip was holding his counterattack press conference. All eyes turned toward it. On the screen, Philip appeared well-dressed, forcing a calm expression, but the hatred still burned in his eyes. His voice boomed through the outdoor speakers. I, Philip Rogers, declare I have been unfairly dismissed, defamed, and humiliated before the entire financial world. I will sue Andre Brooks and this corporation in international court. I will reveal who's really behind these dirty games. A murmur swept through the lobby. Some reporters turned back toward Andre, waiting for his response. Andre simply stared at the screen, a cold smile curling at the corner of his lips. Let him speak. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but they always turn. A fresh report reached Andre's ear. Philip's legal team was trying to contact his former colleagues, offering money and promises of future favors in exchange for testimony against Andre. In the shadows, hands still worked to stir the undercurrents, but they no longer held the strength they once did. Andre looked toward his communications team call for an official company press conference immediately. We won't hide. We will speak the truth. The lobby buzzed with energy. Andre turned, his gaze like steel. The game has only just begun, but this time, the rules will be rewritten. Andre left the grand hall amidst the clamor of the crowd, but every step he took was firm and unwavering. The entire building seemed to shake in the storm of media attention. But within Andre, everything was as clear as a chessboard, where every move had already been calculated to the final checkmate. Behind him, the last shouts from Philip's live press conference still echoed, but now they sounded like the hollow cries of a man flailing in the throes of defeat. His chief aide rushed to his side, panting, lowering his voice to avoid prying ears. Chairman, we've just learned Philip's law firm is throwing money around to buy witnesses. A few mid-level managers have already accepted promises. They might testify for him in court. Andre stopped, his gaze piercing into the aide names. The aide hesitated, glancing around before whispering Robert from sales, Melissa in internal communications. And there are rumors the former head of legal is being courted too. Andre closed his eyes for a brief moment, drawing in a deep breath. Then he opened them, his voice sharp as ice. Assemble the internal investigation team immediately. I want full monitoring of all transactions, communications, emails from these individuals. If there's evidence of collusion, I want it on my desk within 48 hours. The aide nodded, eyes lighting up at the unyielding resolve of this new chairman. Upstairs, Philip's press conference was still broadcasting live. He slammed the table, his voice shrill with anger, trying to salvage his collapsed image. I was set up. Andre Brooks just wants to play the hero, destroy the villain, and paint himself as a savior. I will expose the truth behind this so-called justice he brags about. The hotel press room buzzed. Some reporters pressed him. Do you have any evidence for these accusations, Mr. Rogers? Can you name any specific abuse of power by Mr. Andre Brooks? Philip faltered for a second, then gripped the microphone tighter, trying to steady his voice. You'll see the evidence. I have witnesses, documents. Andre Brooks is no hero. He's just an opportunist. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, Andre stepped into the press room his media team had set up in record time. The lights shone down, dozens of microphones and cameras aimed at him. A reporter called out first, Mr. Brooks. Any comment on what Philip just declared on live TV? Andre looked straight into the camera, his gaze calm but steely. I won't answer with words. I will answer with the truth. This corporation has no more room for shadows. I invite the entire press to observe the hearings and our internal investigations. Everything will be public. Everything will be transparent. Applause erupted in the room. A new sense of trust spread through the atmosphere that had moments ago been thick with anxiety. A veteran reporter raised a hand. Mr. Brooks, we've received reports Philip is paying for witness tampering. How will you counter that? Andre nodded. Thank you for the question. I have already directed the internal investigation team and our legal counsel to work with the authorities. Anyone involved in this scheme will face both the law and their own conscience. Outside, in the dark corner of the parking garage, a man in a black coat whispered into his phone, Mr. Philip, they're tightening the noose. Money won't save this anymore. You need another plan. Philip's voice roared through the phone. Shut up. I haven't lost. I will make Andre Brooks taste humiliation. The relentless flashes of cameras filled the room, the lights flickering as if determined to capture every expression, every movement of Andre Brooks. He stood at the center of the packed press conference, each word he spoke cutting through the dark schemes Philip and his allies were desperately trying to conceal. Across the city, at the hotel where Philip was holding his press conference, he stood frozen, staring at the image of Andre being broadcast live on national television. That bastard! Philip ground his teeth so hard his jaw clenched, his knuckles white from gripping the microphone too tightly. He muttered like a man lost he dares paint himself as the face of justice. Fine. Andre, this game isn't over. Beside him, his private lawyer leaned in and whispered, Mr. Philip, the media is turning against us. Small shareholders have started dumping their shares out of fear. We need a new move now. Philip growled, his eyes burning with fury. Prepare the files. We'll release those old financial contracts, pull in a few disgruntled shareholders. I'll drag Andre down from that throne he's barely had time to warm meanwhile. At the corporation's press room, Andre remained composed. A reporter stood and asked, voice filled with both concern and curiosity, Mr. Brooks, with everything happening, do you believe Philip will stop? Are you concerned for your personal safety? Andre answered without hesitation, a man like Philip, stripped of power, will lash out, will retaliate, will try every smear. But I believe in the strength of transparency and justice. I am not afraid, and anyone who stands with evil shouldn't expect peace. Outside, a few young employees listened, gripping each other's hands, eyes shining. This is truly the leader we needed. An internal announcement echoed through the company's system. From today, all recruitment, promotion, and employee evaluation processes will be open to independent audit. Results will be published publicly for all shareholders and employees. The news rippled out, not only through the press room, but across every floor, every department. A new wave, one of hope and change, had begun to rise. Meanwhile, in a tucked-away cafe, a secret meeting was underway. A few mid-level managers once loyal to Philip huddled together, voices low, faces anxious. What do we do if Philip sinks? He could drag us all down with him, but Andre's tightened the net. Every deal, email, contact, it's all under review. There's no way out. If Philip releases those documents publicly, the stock will tank, Andre will go down too. One in the group quietly pulled out his phone, typing a short message, "I'm ready to cooperate with Andre's side. Request protection." On the other end, Andre's aide received the message and immediately brought it to him. Andre read it, his eyes flashing cold. The net is closing, one by one. They'll show their true faces. At the same time, in a fit of desperation, Philip convened an online call with a group of discontented shareholders, his voice lowered but brimming with hate. "We have to unite. Brooks is just an outsider. If we crash the stock, the board will have no choice but to oust him. I've got old financial contracts, bad debt documents ready. All I need is your signatures on a demand for an emergency board meeting." A seasoned shareholder frowned Philip. "You've taken this too far. You don't have the credibility left to rally anyone." Philip slammed the table. "I swear I'll bring Brooks down if I fall. I'll take him with me." Back at corporate headquarters, Andre received an urgent update. Philip has contacted disgruntled shareholders, plotting to shake the stock and push for your removal. As Chairman Andre gave a faint smile, his eyes like steel. Let's see who removes whom. In the top executive room of the corporate headquarters, Andre stood silently before the large glass window, his eyes fixed on the horizon where skyscrapers bathed in the glow of the setting sun. Behind him, his aide and the legal team worked swiftly, preparing files, each document, each piece of evidence neatly arranged on the long table. A financial storm was about to break. But in Andre's eyes, this was no time to retreat. This was the time to root out the rot that had long festered within the corporation. His aide spoke in a low, worried tone. "Chairman, we've received confirmation Philip has gathered enough signatures from the group of disgruntled shareholders. They're preparing to submit a formal request to convene a special board meeting to review your position as chairman." Andre turned, his gaze steady and unshaken. He stepped to the table, pulled out a thick file, and set it down firmly, his voice deep and resolute. "Get ready. We'll face them with the truth. It's time the entire board sees who really needs to vacate this seat." Out in the hallway, a few managers who had once been loyal to Philip now cast nervous glances at each other, like men caught in the spotlight after years of hiding in the shadows. One of them pulled out his phone and sent a message, "I'm ready to testify for Chairman Andre if needed." On Andre's desk, his phone vibrated softly. He glanced at the message, the corner of his mouth curving into a slight smile. The pieces are starting to remove themselves from Philip's board. At a luxury hotel across the city, Philip sat in a private meeting room, facing a group of disgruntled shareholders. His face was pale from sleepless nights, but his eyes still burned with hatred. He's just an outsider, a man who bought power with money. He has no roots, no long-standing allies. We have to act now. Before he consolidates his power, one shareholder shook his head. "But Philip, the media praises him, the public supports him. One wrong move now, and the stock crashes, we lose everything." Philip slammed the table, his voice almost hissing through clenched teeth. "If we leave him be, we'll lose everything anyway. He'll purge us all. Can't any of you see that?" In the corner of the room, a board member quietly switched on a recorder, capturing every word of the conversation, his eyes cold and calculating. The next morning, the special board meeting was convened. The atmosphere in the main conference room was as tense as a drawn bowstring. Andre entered, dressed in a dark gray suit, his face cold but calm. Every eye turned toward him. Philip sat in a corner, clutching a thick file, his gaze filled with challenge. The elderly board chairman cleared his throat and spoke to open the session. "We have two main matters today. First, to review the complaint and request for a hearing against Mr. Andre Brooks from a group of shareholders. Second, to hear the defense and make a decision." Philip shot to his feet, his voice ringing through the room. "I have proof that Andre Brooks abused his power, defamed me, and damaged this company's reputation." Here he thrust the stack of files in front of everyone, but Andre didn't flinch. He stood tall, his gaze sweeping the room before hearing from Philip. "I invite the board to listen to a recording from his secret meeting with certain shareholders. On the large screen, the audio played, loud and clear if we let him be. Sooner or later, we'll lose everything. We have to bring him down before he consolidates his power. The entire room froze. Several board members exchanged uneasy, stunned glances. Philip's face drained of color. He stammered, This is fabricated. This can't be real. You're all being fooled by him." Andre set a thick file on the table, his voice firm. "And here's the full body of evidence on Philip's misconduct, from discriminatory emails, shady dealings, to conspiracies against this very board. We will vote here and now. The future of this corporation, and who sits in the chairman's seat, will be decided today." All eyes turned to the screen displaying the words, "Vote on the chairman's position and internal misconduct resolution." Andre stood still, both hands resting on the table, his face showing no sign of wavering. His gaze radiated calm resolve, as if he had already foreseen every outcome and was ready to accept it. In stark contrast, Philip shrank into his chair, his face as pale as paper, lips trembling, his hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly that his knuckles turned ghostly white. He knew this final gamble held no more hope. The board chairman raised his hand to signal, "We will proceed with a secret ballot. Those in favor of retaining Mr. Andre Brooks as chairman and approving the restructuring plan, please cast your vote, one by one." The ballots dropped into the glass box at the center of the table. The soft sound echoed in the hearts of everyone present. Every second of the count felt heavy, the air thick with anticipation. When the results were announced, the vast majority of the board had voted unanimously in support of Andre Brooks. Only a few blank votes remained, those who, even at the last moment, lacked the courage to choose a side. Applause erupted, no longer scattered or reluctant. This was true consensus, a release after days of tense uncertainty. Andre bowed his head slightly. "I thank you for your trust. And as I promised from this day forward, this company will have no place for darkness, injustice, or cowardice. We will rebuild and set an example for the entire industry." Philip now was nothing but a shadow of his former self. Security stepped forward, laying a gentle but firm hand on his shoulder, a silent reminder that his time was over. He struggled in desperation, shouting, "You can't do this to me! I'll sue! I'll bring this whole company down!" Andre turned, meeting Philip's eyes that seemed to see through every mask Philip had ever worn. "Philip, you brought yourself down. No one needed to do it for you. At that moment." A board member's phone buzzed. He read the message quietly, then announced authorities have officially opened an investigation into Philip's questionable transactions during his tenure. The room seemed to breathe again. An era had closed, making way for a new dawn. Andre left the hall and stepped onto the highest balcony. The city stretched out before him, its lights glittering like thousands of stars scattered across the earth. But Andre knew the path ahead would not be easy. The cleansing had only just begun. But he was ready, because he wasn't fighting for power, he was fighting for what was right. Below, the press crowd roared Andre Brooks, the new symbol of justice in the financial world. Andre closed his eyes, took a deep breath, letting the night breeze wash over him. He whispered, "Yes, this is only the beginning.